Welcome to the mystery of self-awareness. All of the research on why people are successful in life and work almost always find the characteristic of self-awareness as being one of the keys. The better you know yourself, the more accurately you can deploy yourself against life and work. And the better you know yourself, the more likely it is that you'll work on the things that you need to improve your performance now and in the future. So, fact number one in self-awareness is that self-awareness is good. The second question is awareness of what? And that goes across the entire portfolio of the knowledge, skills, and attributes that make you successful. So, what is it that you know and don't know? What is it that you can do, the skills? What are you capable of doing in terms of performance? And then attributes are things like values and personality and style and pace. So the more you know about yourself, the better. So what do we know about self-awareness? Well, it turns out that in the majority of the 360 research, self is the least accurate appraiser of self. So there's not many individuals who have the gift of self-awareness, knowing exactly who they are. But the 360 results are a little nuanced, so stick with me on this. We're going to get into the weeds. People are more accurate about their cognitive skills. Why is that? Well, they get a lot of feedback. They get grades, they get scores on tests. Cognitive is something that other people recognize. They get their least accurate scores on interpersonal relations, or what might be called EQ. Now, the interesting thing about that one is that there are two selves to everyone. One is the self you think you are, or the self that you would like to portray to others, the ego ideal. But then the more important self is how you are experienced by others. That's where self-awareness falls down. The brain has a special capacity to filter negative, possibly threatening comments that come from your environment, feedback from your environment interpersonally. Your brain tends to try and dismiss negative feedback and take in positive feedback and store it forever. So all of us have great memories of positive things professors or teachers said, or positive things that grandma said or an aunt or an uncle said about you. That stuff the brain loves, and it puts it in the memory system. It becomes defensive when there's negative information coming in. So the brain has a bias to filter down negative information and to bolster positive feedback. You have problems on the other side of feedback, that is people's courage to tell you what they think of you in either casual, informal feedback or in formal feedback like a 360. So we know that in 360s, scores are too high and spread or distribution is not wide enough. Everybody uses the middle of the scale. And a lot of raters say that they're afraid that you will become defensive and you will reject their feedback and that you will be jealous of the feedback and take out a revenge path to harm you for giving me negative feedback. So we're restricted in both ways. That is, the self doesn't accurately take in negative interpersonal feedback. And on the other side, people who should be giving you feedback, because feedback is the breakfast of champions. It's the gift that keeps on giving your entire career. So we have two filtering methods that kind of feedback is being reduced. Getting deeper in the weeds is the fact that your brain has sort of two operational systems. My apologies to neurologists who are watching this because it's a ridiculous oversimplification of the brain. But you basically have two operating systems. You have the cognitive system where you think, problem solve, do analytical thinking, critical thinking, create perspective, bring knowledge to an issue, scientific fact to consider, information. That's what we call the executive brain. It's generally the prefrontal cortex plus a few other parts. And then you have the emotional brain, the brain of feelings, the brain of beliefs, the brain of biases. That brain has better control over the behavior you emit than does the cognitive brain. So all behavior that you emit has component parts of the executive brain. That one you probably know what you're doing. But it also has the emotional brain, and you know less about that because that particular brain does not speak English. You've got language in your executive brain, but feelings in your emotional brain. When you do an appraisal of yourself, you're seeing your cognitive self, the one that you apply to work and life, and you can pretty much get measurements about how well you do on tests and whether you can do Sudoku and fill out crossword puzzles. But you're not aware exactly of what you look like to others, and how you're observed by others is the key information. It turns out that half of your behaviors that you emit are nonverbal. That is, it's facial expressions, it's facial color, it's body posture, it's gesticulation. You do all kinds of things when you're talking that convey information to the receiving person. A lot of that nonverbal behavior comes up through the emotional system. And those things you're less aware of. Now, there's a particular group of people in the world called actors and actresses who understand that. And the reason they get Academy Awards is that they can actually show the emotional nonverbal behavior in a role that they're playing to convey to you that they're sad or they're happy or they're rejecting a partner. Actors and actresses have learned to gain control of that, and they make their living through managing nonverbal behavior. Most of us don't do that. So when I fill out my questionnaire, my self-view, my cognitive's going to be pretty good. I have 122 IQ, and I graduated from college, and I can do Excel spreadsheets, and you pretty much know your cognitive behavior. And then you get to all of the interpersonal skills, listening skills, conflict management skills, presenting skills, influencing skills. What you're actually answering is your ego ideal. What do I think I am? What would I like to be showing to others? What's missing is what I actually look like to others. When someone else is filling out your 360, cognitive's pretty much what you said. They get to the interpersonal stuff and they see the whole you. The one you know about and the one you don't know about. So they're seeing the cognitive brain and the emotional brain emit behaviors, emit gestures, taking on a blame meeting where you're pointing at a team member and you're not even aware that you're doing this, but somebody later tells you you shouldn't do that in a public meeting. And I've coached hundreds of executives who deny that they've done any of the nonverbal behaviors interpersonally. And the team says he rejects every new idea. And I say, well, how do you know he rejects it? He folds his arm. And I tell that to the executive and they say, no, I don't. Well, in today's Zoom video, I now have evidence, so it's easier to do coaching. So every time somebody comes up with a new idea or has conflict with this boss, you get the I'm a closed person. So those are the nonverbals. So A, self-awareness is extremely important. Throughout your career, seek out feedback from trusted sources on what your nonverbals are communicating. And see, like a good actor or actress, you can gain control of that piece of yourself and flourish in your career.